this is your host, Julia Napini. I am a clinical and forensic social worker who owns a counseling practice and a consulting business. In this show, we discuss the challenges of being successful in business while maintaining your integrity and staying true to yourself. Join me while I interview other professionals and share insights from life and experience. Let's talk about RingRx, our latest sponsor. RingRx is a high-quality, HIPAA-compliant telephone, text, and fax communications platform. They provide seamless, cost-effective communications for behavioral therapists, medical practices, hospitals, and other healthcare providers. RingRx is designed for modern healthcare environments. They offer customizable features like a phone app, automated patient outreach, voicemail, after-hours call routing, and top-quality desk phones. Try RingRx for free today at ringrx.com. And if you sign up using the code CLIMB, you'll get 15% off your monthly bill forever. Conditions apply. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Compassionate Climb podcast. I know I always say that I'm excited, but it's reached new heights today. And that is because I get to have someone who is the newest addition of the Compassionate Consulting team. We're going to talk about her climb, what you can expect working with her, and really where her specialties are at. But it's also just going to be an enjoyable conversation from me because it's someone that I really enjoy. So, Lucita Clondas, welcome to the show.
I'm so excited to be here.
Oh my goodness. So we have to fill everybody in. So you and I both went to the same graduate school at the same time. Mm-hmm. And you were somebody that I recognized when I was in the grocery store. And one day I was like, I need to just know where I know this person from. And so I stopped you and we started chatting and we exchanged information. We made the connection. We stayed in touch. We would meet up at pretty consistent intervals and grab breakfast and talk about our practices. And the most recent time, a couple months back, I was sitting listening to you speak. And I was like, you have so much to offer others that have considered the path that we've taken. Have you ever considered consulting? And we had that conversation and here we are.
I'm so excited. Like this, everything has just lined up so perfectly for this.
Yeah, it really has. So give everybody background. Tell us about your practice and anything about your own journey to starting that would be helpful for them to know.
All right. So I, like you said, same graduate program. We did State College back before it was a university.
Yes.
And so from there, I worked with DYS. I worked at a therapeutic school for students with some pretty significant mental health needs for a while, spent a lot of time with adolescents. And then as we were starting to build our family and I needed a job that was a little more flexible time-wise, I moved into sort of a group clinic practice, which was exactly the right fit for that time. But as time went on, it wasn't the right fit anymore. They always sort of struggled with independent contractor versus employee and that kind of tricky dynamic. So it was great for a while. And then the pandemic hit and they really struggled with how to navigate that.
Yeah.
And I felt like this place that used to be meeting a lot of my needs wasn't anymore. They never had a plan to go back really after things transitioned to telehealth. And I don't love telehealth. Love in-person therapy. I like to have an office. I like to not be in the basement of my house trying to deal with clients while the children are upstairs running amok. So I realized it was time for me to go, right? I was so burnt out there. And we had met and talked about it. And so then in 2021, a colleague and I started Connections in Counseling. It is in Lakeville, Massachusetts. She sees kids, I see adults. We have a lot of shared values in terms of what our caseload represents, the way we deliver our services, what our goals are. And we've been here for almost 4 years now. And I love it. Like, I love what we're doing. I get excited when I come to work every day. I enjoy it. But the one part I miss the most, and I think I brought this up in that breakfast, was it's just the two of us. And I love working with her, but I wish we had a bigger team, right? I always, from the time that I got independently licensed on, have always done some sort of like supervision role or mentorship role, whether it was interns or clinicians who needed their hours to get, supervision hours towards licensure. Or, I mean, at my last job, I had a colleague who had a PhD, just happened to have a license in a different state, had way more experience than me, but I got to supervise her because she needed those hours in this state.
Yeah.
And I loved it. Like, it was such a great opportunity to grow. I like watching people as they develop in their career. I like to read process recordings. And so I miss that. And our practice right now is so good where it is that it doesn't make sense for us to take on other employees. It's not the right setting for an intern.
Sure.
So I wasn't quite sure how else to get that piece. And then it sounded like that was exactly what you needed in your practice.
For sure. There are so many things about your journey that I saw really setting you apart. And I saw how you did so many things so well. And I remember some of our earlier conversations when I had started my practice and you were considering doing the same, and realized that our values were in alignment and integrity really matters to you and you want to do things properly. And so we aligned there for sure.
Yes.
And then I saw you kind of take the information and run with it. And we hear a lot of mixed things about partnerships. And I think we're more likely to hear about the ones that don't work out well. And every time you and I would meet, you spoke so positively and highly about your partner in this. And I was always so curious what you did differently to make it successful. And so we had some conversations about that. But that, I feel, in this consulting space is so helpful to have that knowledge. Anything that you can share about that would help the listeners to be mindful of what contributes to success with a partnership?
So when we started out, every single person we talked to was like, don't do a partnership. It's a bad idea. And we decided to do it anyway. But the idea is, especially if you have if it's a one person, you get to make all the decisions. It's a lot of responsibility, but it's also easy this is the way it's going to be and that's it.
Right.
If you have a three-way partnership where you have that third person, right? We all know about how much more stable triangles are in relationships, but there's that third person to be the tiebreaker. What if one person wants to grow and the other person's not ready? Who wins? What if one person wants to pay to have the office cleaned and the other person wants to do it themselves? Who gets the deciding vote on that stuff, right?
Yeah.
And so Colleen and I had worked together for over a decade at that point. We knew each other's values. We also had read, we had done utilization review on each other's charts. We had run groups together. So we were both very confident in the other person's clinical work. I'm never worried about what's going on in her office and that's going to go back on me in any way. But we also knew each other's personal lives. We knew what else was on our plates and how much bandwidth we had to commit. I know that during during baseball season, she's not going to be in the office as much. She's not going to see as many client hours. And that's okay, because as soon as baseball ends, I know she's going to make it up on the other end. And that's okay, right? We had enough insight personally and professionally that we were really comfortable. But we also spent a ton of time doing the legwork before we started.
Yeah.
I have a beautiful business plan that nobody reads. I'm kind of followers on that because we didn't need to present it to a bank or anything. We did it for us. We did it because we wanted to work out all those details ahead of time.
Yeah.
If we had a disagreement, how are we going to figure out who the deal breaker was? If we ever wanted to stop, if one person wanted to stop and the other person wanted to continue, what was the plan? If Colleen dies tomorrow, what's the plan? How do I take care of her clients, right? What would we be willing to cover? What would we not? We spelled all of it out So there was so much less room for resentment and hurt feelings or frustration.
Yeah.
Early stages, we met all the time. Pretty much we didn't have clients, we met. And just went over all the details. What's working, what's not, what do we have to change?
Yeah.
And now we talk all the time, but we have a scheduled business meeting that's a standing thing where we go through and say, what do we want to do with our policies this year? Do we want to change any insurances that we take? Do we want to update our forms? Like, those are conversations we're having so often that we don't have a time for stuff to build up.
There are so many key things that you mentioned that I want to highlight that sounds like they really contributed to the success, and also the joy that you still speak about your practice with, and the fact that you can say that you look forward to going into the office and seeing your clients, which I think is really indicative of how you've set this up. So this was not lackadaisical by any means. You went into a business partnership with somebody that you knew professionally and personally for a long period of time, which is huge. You had a really solid business plan, even if nobody got to see it. You went through the motions, you got it on paper. You and her both worked on it, reviewed it, were in agreement. And then it sounds like you also had the difficult conversations where you thought through all these scenarios that may not have been the most comfortable, but were really essential so that you have the peace of mind and you have a plan and you've already talked it through. And then it also sounds like you maintain those open lines of communication throughout, where before you met whenever you could, and now you still have these set meetings where you're coming together and future forecasting. Anything I missed?
No, I think that's the foundation of it.
I love it. What were some of the things that contributed to that joy that you're still feeling? Because I know many private practitioners make that leap, and some of them have some guidance or they do their research, and others kind of stumble through and figure it out as they go. And either way, you can end up being successful. But very oftentimes they hit this glass ceiling where the only way to earn additional income is to see more clients. Everybody has their cap of how many people they should be seeing in any given day or any given week. And so what were some of the things that contributed to you really creating this business and this caseload that still works for you today?
A huge part was just being able to be really particular about which clients I wanted to see, right? In the last practice, it was, you've got to fill your caseload, and here's what we have for referrals, pick from that, or if you don't pick, we'll assign somebody to you.
Sure.
And sometimes they were not the right fit. You know, it's not that they weren't a client I could potentially be helpful with, but they weren't necessarily a client that I felt like, oh my gosh, this is exactly my person, right?
Yeah.
Here, I get to read every single intake or every single referral and be like, ooh, you know what? That's not me. Like, that's not a great client for me, but I've got a great network of people and I can maybe refer you to somebody else who would be a good fit. And it's really given me the flexibility to choose to work with people who I know when they walk in the door, I'm excited to see them. They're excited to see me, and we're going to do good work together. It also works great because Colleen and I have such different ideal clients.
Right.
So there have been times where, like, she's gotten a referral and she'll be like, oh, this is a Lucita client. I know somebody told you wanted to meet with me, but you don't. I'm going to refer you next door. Like, you go over there. And I've done the same with her because you know who you work well with, right?
Right.
I can carry a couple of trauma clients at a time. I cannot carry a caseload of trauma. For me, like, I will burn out way too fast for that.
Sure.
I love to work with older adults. I love to work with people who are dealing with chronic pain conditions. I love to work with anxiety and OCD. That's my niche. That's my wheelhouse.
Yeah.
That's where I've done extra trainings. That's where I feel really confident when somebody walks in and they're like, this is what's going on. And I'm able to say, oh yeah, I've got that. Like, no problem. We can handle that together. That's so exciting.
It is. Well, and the other piece that I always took away from our conversations, some people have an affinity for the business side and other people don't. And I feel with you, there are certain aspects of it that really light you up. And I also would hear of how you divide and conquer. So between you and Colleen, you're very clear, okay, these are all of the things that need to get done from a business standpoint. managing the office, caseload, admin related stuff, and who's going to do what, and really dividing up those roles. So what was helpful in that piece? Because every time we talk about it, you'd speak to, it always ends up leveling off ultimately. And I don't feel like that's always the case in most relationships or professional relationships.
It doesn't always. We're so lucky that it's happened the way it does. But like, the bank is close to her house, so she is the one who deposits all of the checks. We've been in business for 4 years. I have never had to go deposit a check because it's not near my house, so I don't have to do that. And it's great. But I do all of the financial stuff in terms of like making the spreadsheets and tracking the expenses and checking the accounts and making sure that the light bill gets paid and meeting with the tax accountant. Not that Colleen's not welcome to do that. She gets invited to all of them. She just trusts that she doesn't have to go if she doesn't want to.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, if we need to call and deal with an insurance company, she's happy to call and sit on hold. I hate that. She does that piece. I do this piece. Just like I take the trash out and I water the plants, she vacuums and cleans the bathroom. Right? Like, I don't know if it's exactly equal, but it's a balance that for us feels like we're both getting to do the things that we prefer and staying away from our non-preferred tasks.
Yeah.
And I think it's just the professional respect that comes along with it, right?
Totally.
When you know the other person is doing their job and you're able to trust it, and when they come in with ideas, you know that they're coming from this place of, hey, I'm really thinking about what works for both of us, what works for our business. I did documentation training, and I came into her and I was like, hey, I want to revamp our entire treatment plan. And she's like, okay, yeah, that sounds like a good idea.
Wow. So ultimately, it just works. But the key piece is the professional respect and the fact that you knew going into this that there was enough aligned and that there was this desire for it to be reciprocal and that you both wanted it to work, and there was a level of investment there, which is so key. So you've definitely touched upon a lot about what it would be like for someone who's seeking out a consultant and wants to start their practice, whether it's a partnership or solo. They want it to be successful. They want to make sure that they're considering everything that they need to beforehand to ensure that it's the right decision for them. What are the pros? What are the cons? What are the steps? I get that question all the time. People want this roadmap of where do I start? And then what do I do from there? Timelines. When am I going to get there? How quickly can I make this happen? So I feel like those are all things that you can help with. And so one of the things that I was noticing as I was coming to you, and you were such a great sounding board as my practice was growing and I was expanding, you were very clear that you are happy with what you have and it's working and it's serving a purpose. But I was picking up on that desire for a little bit more. And this is such a great balance. So my focus in compassionate consulting gets to be those entrepreneurs who are considering expanding a team. They have a solid, established business, but they want to be in a leadership role. They want to hire additional people and they want to lead. And so I'm able to really step into that where you can be the one that focuses more on starting and doing it successfully. And then obviously if somebody's considering a partnership. So share with the audience what they can expect in your consulting process and what that would look like.
So even prior to joining you, like just colleagues professionally who have decided to make the leap into private practice, I get so excited to talk to them about it, talking about like, what name are you picking and why, and what does that communicate about your practice, and where is your office and what does that communicate about your practice, and are you taking insurance, are you doing private pay, what are all the nitty gritty things that define you as a clinician, and how are you making that visible in the work that you're going to do. I've always gotten excited doing that with friends, and I would love to be able to do it with more people. I think grad school is fantastic, but there are none of them that really teach you how to transition into private practice.
Agreed.
There's not a class that teaches you how to do bookkeeping.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a class that teaches you insurance billing or how to market yourself. And it's also a field where a lot of times we're kind of given this message about diminishing our own worth in order to meet the needs of our communities, right? And I think there is a balance where you can get what you can advocate for your own worth,
Yes.
but also be able to provide a wonderful service to your clients and be a resource in your community. And there's got to be a balance, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's okay as a therapist to be able to say, I would like to get paid, maybe a livable wage. Like, that would be great. I would love to be able to if I work 40 hours a week or whatever your work schedule is.
Right.
So I think in this role, being able to do it more consistently and on sort of a professional basis instead of just a personal one, what I'm looking for is, how do we set you up to be successful, right? Here's the roadmap. Here's the order of operations, the best way to use your time to make sure that you're not doing steps backwards and creating more work for yourself, because that's huge. And then as you're developing, really setting it up so that you can enjoy it in the long run. Making sure that you're marketing towards your ideal client, making sure you know who that ideal client is. Who are the people that you're networking with? Who are the people that you're getting referrals from? And what are you bad at, right? Oh my gosh, we were going to do our own billing when we started. That is a separate skill set. I don't have it. I am not good at it, right? It's one of my goals to get better, but right now I'm not. We found a guy who's fantastic at it. We pay him a percentage and the money shows up in our account, and I don't have to worry about that anymore. And it's absolutely worth it, because I know that for me, that's something that it was going to be better to pay somebody else who knows how to do it. And that's different for everybody. For somebody, it might be, I can keep my own books. For somebody, it might be, I need to pay an accountant because I have no idea what I'm doing there.
Sure.
You know, you don't have to know everything, but you got to know what you don't know so you can get the supports to fill in those gaps.
Yeah, very well said. I am thinking of so many reasons why a consultant could be beneficial. And obviously, we're a little biased. So some of the things that you were highlighting are that roadmap, somebody who is where you ultimately want to be. They've gotten to either that finish line, or they're well on their way, or they're a few steps ahead of you and can show you the direction on how to get there. I think the other piece that's so invaluable, and it's been kind of fun sharing resources and creating our folder where we're storing everything that we've created that's been helpful, whether it's a spreadsheet, whether it's a checklist, even just the resource list of people, right? So building that team outside of your team, having an accountant that you can trust and an attorney that's there if you need them, and knowing how to trademark if that's what you're choosing to do. And so we've taken all of that guesswork out of it. We have interviewed people, we've worked with them. We, for the most part, would only recommend somebody that we can stand behind wholeheartedly, that we've had our own experience with or came recommended by somebody that we really value and trust. And so there's that piece. But then I also think that what you were saying is so significant, and I'm sure part of the process that you could walk somebody through. What are those tasks that are within your zone of genius? So obviously the clinical work, we would assume meeting with clients. Some people might enjoy some marketing or being on social media or writing blog posts or creating a newsletter, and others may be like, absolutely not. There's the financial piece, which should likely be handled by somebody who's a professional. And when it comes to managing risk, we should leave that in the hands of an attorney. So you're speaking to identifying billing as one of those pieces that, you know what, it's worth it to me to pay somebody to take that off my plate. And I could see you walking somebody else through that process of what are the things you want to retain and that make sense for you to do so, and what are the things that make sense to really outsource and identify somebody else.
Exactly.
Yes. Yeah, and it sounds like you feel good about that decision. So my other question would be, for those that are listening and they might be on the fence. So obviously I fully recognize, and I'm sure you do too, consulting is an investment, and it's not one that was affordable for me when I first started. And so I have a different mindset on it now. I feel like if it's a priority and if it's something that we really see value in, we can make it happen. And whether it gets put on a credit card if it needs to and gets paid off, whether it's that you're taking that leap of faith and banking on yourself and knowing that you have a plan to get that money back. But I would also say that we work really hard to make sure that this is not cost prohibitive and are very mindful of being accessible to people. What would you say for anybody who's hesitating about consulting and what might help them to feel like this is a good choice?
So I think if you have a really, really strong network of colleagues who have already done private practice that you can lean on, maybe you don't need consulting. Mm-hmm. But if you don't have that, if you don't know where to turn to get those answers, factoring that into your startup costs is so important, because it might seem like a big ticket at the beginning.
Sure.
The amount you're going to save down the road is going to far outweigh it. Mm-hmm. I think of when I was thinking about whether or not we were going to grow here, whether or not we were going to take on employees, right? And I sat down with a few different people who had chosen to grow. And there were some people who said, yep, I did it this way and it worked great. And I talked to somebody who said, you know what, I did it the wrong way and I lost so much money in my first year. And I spent another year digging myself out of that hole and repairing the mistakes that I had made because I didn't know better.
Right.
Even for us with the billing, it took us 6 months to dig out of the mistakes that we had made before we hired our biller, because we didn't know what we didn't know. Mm-hmm. And if we had known what a weakness that was from the very beginning, if I had had somebody point out to me how hard it was going to be and how much work it was going to take, I probably would have started him from the get-go. And I would have been able to make my payroll 6 months earlier. And that, yeah, it's an investment up front, but you're going to get that back by not doing the same work twice. Mm-hmm. And not having to have sessions that you can't recoup because you billed them too late, right? There's so much opportunity to lose the money because you didn't do it the right way, because you didn't sign the right forms when you were establishing your business, because you didn't set it up as the right type of entity. Like, that's so much work. Mm-hmm. Or to have to go back and redo credentialing with insurance because you put the wrong information in because you used your home address instead of your work address. You do not want to redo all of that. That's hours of your time that you could be spending in session with a client getting paid for.
Absolutely. Well, different clinicians come into the consulting process with me with different timelines, right? And some are very reasonable and some are maybe not the most realistic, but we always do whatever we can to try to get them there. I would say that what I've seen is that ability to achieve success, to be profitable, to do the work that you really enjoy in a way that suits you with clients that you ultimately want to work with much faster if you have somebody that can serve as a guide, give you that roadmap, provide those resources, make those suggestions for the right technology, help you with forms, but also an accountability partner. Because for me in my process, when somebody leaves a meeting with me, I mean, we're co-creating our plan, but there's always a summary of all the key points. I'm attaching any documents or resources that would be helpful. I'm providing recommendations for an administrative assistant, for example, or a potential accountant or an attorney, so that they can either just go ahead with them or make a call and determine if it's the right fit and move forward. But I would also say what you are. I second the cost savings. Being in situations, and you gave some great examples where you move forward, not maybe fully acknowledging what could happen, like with billing, for example. You do the best that you can, you muddle through it, and then you find yourself in a situation where you owe money or there's a time frame that needs to be kept, and we don't know what we don't know. And I think the shift for me is that once I became a business owner, and especially once I became a group practice owner, I can't use that as an excuse anymore. We are expected to know enough to be in compliance, to follow the law, to be ethical. And so these are all things that we can help with. So for those listening, is there anything that we didn't cover today that you think would be really helpful for someone who's considering consulting or potentially working with you?
Well, I think the easiest thing is to to reach out and see, right? You don't have to make a commitment. One of the things that we've agreed on that I think is so important and so valuable is starting with a free consultation, right? Doing a 30-minute call with somebody to really figure out, is this the right fit for you? If during that 30 minutes we're talking and it feels like, you know what, actually you have more than you think you have, you don't need me. I don't want to take advantage of somebody. I don't want to take time from somebody who doesn't need that. But if, as we're talking, you're like, oh, this is the area I need help with. This is the area I need help with. I can tell you whether or not I'm that person, because I'm not that person for everybody, just like I'm not the therapist for everybody. If I'm not the one who can help you with that, I'm going to let you know. And then we can figure out, how much support do you need? Do you need to meet once for like an hour and just get some quick questions and some quick resources? Do you need a more comprehensive package where we're meeting multiple times and we're checking in at different stages and kind of supporting the whole process? You don't have to you don't know what you don't know, right? We learned that there. You don't have to commit to anything right now. You can reach out and figure out, wait a minute, is this the right thing for me or is it not, before you decide you want to make sure that the value is worth it for you. And I get that.
Absolutely. No, I'm really glad that you mentioned that. So I'll make it easy for people, and I will include the link to schedule that free consult with you in our show notes. If anybody's looking for more information on either of us, compassionateconsultingcompany.com is the best place to go. And we also have a quiz that was created that really helps you get this tangible score at the end. The nice thing about it is I feel like even going through the quiz itself is so beneficial because it highlights all the components that we would be talking about in our process together. And each of the answers kind of give you direction on where you should be. And so by the end, that in and of itself could help craft our plan and how we're going to structure those meetings. And so I'll include the link to make that easy for everyone as well. I could not be more excited to have you on board. I am really looking forward to collaborating with one another and being able to help even more clinicians be successful in their practice. So stay tuned, everybody.
If you like what you're hearing, please rate and review. This will help others find us and benefit as well. The Compassionate Climb podcast represents the opinions of Julia Napini and her guests. The information provided is intended for educational purposes only and should not be taken as legal advice. If that is what you are seeking, please consult an attorney.